Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, y'all, Juneteenth, federal holiday, the second time it's not been a federal holiday since the bill was signed into law last year. Yeah, y'all see me rocking my Juneteenth shirt, and you know I had to rock the Nagaz shoes, the black-owned shoe company out of Atlanta. And of course, you know, they have on the back of the right shoe, 1619 to 2019, 400 years. So you may not be able to see it. So if you're going to have a black holiday, you're going to at least have to dress like you're working it. And so me, of course, being from Houston, Texas, the birthplace of Juneteenth, it means a little bit different to those of us who grew up in the Lone Star State, where it became the first state in 1980 to actually create a state holiday. And it was the late Representative Al Edwards, my alpha brother, who is known as the father of Juneteenth in Texas. The woman known as the grandmother of Juneteenth is Opal Lee, 95 years young. She's been giving folks hell, walking all across the country, being here in D.C., trying to let people know about Juneteenth. She joins us right now. Opal, glad to have you here. I know this is something that you always fought for. And Opal, I need you to speak to this because there are a lot of people who are like, I don't understand why we're making a big deal out of Juneteenth. We don't even need Juneteenth. Just explain to folk why you fought so hard for this to become a federal holiday.
Roland, Juneteenth means freedom. And I'm not talking about for black folk or Texans. I'm talking about everybody. And we're not free yet. As long as we have the disparities that we have, we're not free. And I'm talking about not being able for the youngsters to learn what actually happened. You know, you can't erase history, so let us learn about it and decide we won't let it happen again. Now, there are other things that need to be addressed, so we can't rest on our laurels because we got us a Juneteenth holiday. I'm delighted about it. I could do a holy dance, but they tell me when I try, I'm twerking, so. All I'm saying is there are too many other things that need to be addressed before we're free. Joblessness, homelessness, health care some of us can get and others can't. Climate change. I tell you, what we're doing to our earth is despicable. It's our fault. If we don't do something about it, we're all going to hell in a handbasket.
You know, I'm glad you put it like that, because what I keep reminding people is that This wasn't just a barbecue day or a concert at the park. It was about self-empowerment, Black reliance, and continuing to fight to advance our community, fight for freedom. That's what Juneteenth always was when we celebrated in Texas. Then it began to spread. And so for people who are whining and complaining about it, it's what we make of the holiday, what we do with it. And so we should be looking at this as an empowerment opportunity, a Black economic empowerment opportunity, as opposed to saying, oh, it doesn't matter.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I tell people over and over that we are our brother's keeper. It's in the Bible. We're to look after each other. And heaven knows we need looking after. So I say make yourself a committee of one. You know, people who aren't on the same page we are on, change their minds. And the minds can be changed. If people can be taught to hate, they can be taught to love.
Absolutely. And you have not stopped, continued fighting. So what's next for you?
Well, there's much to do. And so I'm asking you and all the people who follow you to do what you can. Be that committee I'm talking about. Help somebody else. So help me. I found out my problems and I have had some doozies. They get worked out when I'm helping somebody else. I don't want you to think they go away. They don't. But I can handle them a lot better when I'm helping somebody else who's got worse problems than I've got.
Well, Opal Lee, it's always great to see you. Glad you've been on the front lines. We appreciate all that you have done. And we could not, of course, celebrate this Juneteenth on the Black Star Network without giving you a call.
Thank you so much, Roland.
I
Look forward to talking to you again.
Indeed, indeed. You take care.
All right.
Folks, last year we interviewed historian and author Dr. Gerald Horne about another one of his books. And while we were talking to him, right before that actually interview, he shared some interesting details about Juneteenth that even I wasn't aware of. Check this out.
I mean, can I add a vignette about some new revelations about Juneteenth?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, I'm working on this book that would have been published now but for the pandemic. So we all know about Juneteenth, June 19, 1865. Supposedly General Granger shows up and tells the Negroes that they're free. But what's downplayed is that he was accompanied by 75,000 so-called colored troops. And why did he need so much backup? He needed so much backup because the settlers in Texas, which was the Confederate state least damaged by the Civil War, and was the Confederate state in which slave owners from Louisiana and Arkansas were bringing their enslaved during the Civil War, because you saw the Black population increase exponentially. They had this idea of resuming slavery in Texas. And not only that, but recall that Mexico, the southern neighbor of Texas, was then under French rule. They were supporting the Confederacy. And so many of the Black people were going to be deported into Mexico to continue slavery. Jefferson Davis, the head of the Confederacy, he was captured after the fall of Richmond trying to escape to Texas so he could lead this rebellion. And so these 75,000 Black troops then became a hammer against the French troops in Mexico, against the Confederates in Texas, and helped to save the United States from resuming the U.S. Civil War under a different guise.
Wow. And that, I actually had not heard that. Where'd you discover that?
I've been spending a lot of time doing research in the past few months during the pandemic, reading microfilm on lockdown, U.S. State Department reports from Mexico, for example. Also, you know, excuse me if I'm going on too much about this.
No, go ahead. But, I keep telling you, Gerald, this is a Black-owned show. We good. Go ahead. We can talk about Black stuff. We good.
Okay. So the French in Mexico had brought African soldiers from Algeria, which they had colonized in 1830, and also from Egypt and Sudan, which they deeply influenced, thousands and thousands to Mexico as backup. And that's why General Granger needed these 75,000 so-called colored troops, because this was going to be, pardon the expression, another battle royal that was going to unfold. And the man in charge of the Confederate effort, Matthew Fontaine Maury, M-A-U-R-Y, who until last year had a statue in his honor in Richmond, Virginia, he was the mastermind of this plot to continue slavery. And by the way, even before then, he had this other diabolical plot of deporting all the black people. This is before the U.S. Civil War, deporting all the black people to Brazil. And that plot was also thwarted, which helps to explain why we are now in North America speaking English and not in Brazil speaking Portuguese.
Wow. That is some deep history right there.
All right, y'all. So it's been pretty interesting looking at different reactions on social media when it comes to Juneteenth. And so a Republican strategist, Lee Spikerman, he reposted this video that he actually dropped in 2020 talking about Juneteenth. He worked with the Bush administration and some others. And, you know, Lee and I have disagreed on some policy matters, but on this one, Lee's on point.
Most African Americans are not waiting for white people to say that they feel guilty for how African Americans have been treated throughout our history. Most African Americans are not waiting for white people to admit that they're privileged in our society. What most African Americans are waiting for is for white people, especially white leaders, to wake up and acknowledge that there are significant structures and barriers remaining in place to African American advancement in our country, in the criminal justice system, in the economy, in terms of housing patterns, which then has a huge impact on K through 12 education. So as we celebrate Juneteenth, I hope that we as white people will resolve to stop asking African Americans to wait, to stop asking them to wait to reach their full potential within our country. I hope that we as white people will be the ones to start pointing out injustice, unfairness, insults, whether it's across our country or in our own offices. You know, most black people don't want to be that guy or that woman that has to point out problems that involve race. It would sure be nice if white people at least took some of that burden. White people do still dominate every realm of our society. So it's incumbent upon us to be the prime movers in the actions and the initiatives that will turn things around and enable even more African Americans to do great things in this country.
I heard so many people, again, we ain't asked for this, we want, and I totally understand policy. I totally understand we want the George Floyd Justice Act. We want the For the People Act. We want the John Lewis Act. But what I need people to understand is this is the only holiday that literally even mentions slavery. America has done such a great job totally ignoring slavery and saying, y'all need to get over it. The benefit of Juneteenth is we don't have to get over it. Now they are forced to have to discuss it at least once a year. But the other thing that is happening with Juneteenth is that not only are they being forced to discuss it, we get an opportunity to actually set the record straight, what Gerald Horne just said, checking Bill Nye and others. And so I believe that we should be approaching Juneteenth a little different. Joining me now, Dr. Greg Carr, of course, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, Omokongo Dabinga Professorial Lecturer at the School of International Service. Glad to have him here at American University. Of course, Reverend Jeff Carr. He is with Trinity Fellowship in Nashville, Tennessee. Dr. Julian Malvo, Dean, College of Ethnic Studies, California State University, Los Angeles. Greg, see, this is why, because I did a thing earlier with Tamika Mallory and my son, and this came up. And she said, Roland, I saw you arguing with some people about Juneteenth. And she's like, you know, I understand both sides. I said, I said, the mistake that we're making is that we're taking a wrong approach to the Juneteenth federal holiday. I said, we now get all these people who say, well, the black folks in Texas, y'all were late. No, Emancipation Proclamation, 1863, war was still going on, unenforceable. It wasn't until April 9th when the Confederates gave up and surrendered. And then, of course, they found out 2 months later in Texas. Slavery still wasn't over until the 13th Amendment was ratified in December of 1865. But not just that, we also now understand that Mississippi was the last state in America to ratify the 13th Amendment, and they didn't do it until what, 1995. And so all of these historical things, Greg, are critically important because we now get to put the history on the front burner, and we now get to walk folk through not just Juneteenth, but what has happened since Juneteenth, especially when it comes to economic inequality.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mother Lee said it perfectly. We're not free. And she told that to Joe Biden. I know that because I'm what they call in the law an eyeball witness. A year ago when Biden signed the legislation, Mother Lee was there. First, look, you're 95 years old, and she walked 2.5 miles the other day to represent the 2.5 years in between the emancipation and Juneteenth. So I mean, hats off to that sister. And I have to say right quick, Roland, since Jeff is here, we got all these alphas here. A couple of weeks ago, our sister Gussie Fuller, of course, your sister's neighbor right there in the Houston area, joined Alpha Kappa Alpha. So she made the right decision. So that's what make sure I said something about Gussie while she's out there. But yeah, this holiday is different than all the rest. I mean, while you were down there on the National Mall covering the Poor People's Campaign on Saturday, and then Sunday, we were all together. I was in Philadelphia at Cabrini University, and I got on a plane, ran to Atlanta for a celebration, and came back here to D.C. That shirt you have on doesn't have the Juneteenth colors that Ben Hagan, the folks out of Connecticut, the National Juneteenth Commission, say are the Juneteenth colors, red, white, and blue, with that star in the middle.
No, they're not.
They're not. But what is amazing, Roland, this is the thing. And see, this is the thing that white folk, nobody else could predict. The colors that I saw in Atlanta, in Philly, en route, every time the plane stopped back in D.C., are the colors you have on. Black people are wearing the red, black, and green, and the yellow, of course, in a lot of the Caribbean countries is added as well. We're wearing those colors because Juneteenth is a holiday, not even a celebration, a commemoration of Black self-determination. When I tell you, I saw so many, I went in one subdivision riding past in Atlanta, there must have been 60 or 70 cars. They were all headed to one house. And I thought to myself, you know what? This could become, for Black folk, bigger than Memorial Day. Because now, unlike Memorial Day, all the children are out, K-12. And the summer solstice, the official beginning of summer on the calendar, is tomorrow, the 21st. And what we're seeing is, just as you said, beginning in Texas in 1866, continuing throughout the rest of the 19th century, and then into the 20th century, as we saw places like Buffalo, New York, Rochester, Minnesota, all over, Richmond, Virginia, Philadelphia, other places, D.C., have Juneteenth celebrations. And then in 1968, as we talked about when you were down on the mall, when we're all down there on Saturday, on Juneteenth 1968, Coretta Scott King stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial at the Solidarity Day rally, which closed out the Resurrection City, which of course laid the foundation for what Reverend Barber and Reverend Theo Harris and everybody did on Saturday, and talked about Juneteenth, and more people around the country found out Black people have been celebrating Juneteenth around the country coming out of Texas all along. When this became a federal holiday, that spirit of self-determination that Gerald is writing about, and I should say this, you were the first to have Gerald on talking about that work. I laugh about it all the time. I talked to Gerald for 3 hours today. We sat with him for an hour for an episode of The Black Table here on the Black Star Network, on your Black Star Network, that's going to air this Friday. Gerald hadn't left, Roland. This is hilarious to me. While you've been all over the world, to Africa and back, all over the country, Gerald Horn ain't left his house. Gerald Horn been in quarantine. Gerald said, I'm not leaving. Gerald Horn has written in, I'm going to pull it here so everybody can see. We're going to talk about it Friday. He's written a 622-page book, The Counter-Revolution of 1836, from his house, y'all.
Wow.
He procured a microfilm reader, Roland. He went out and found them. Well, he had people send him a microfilm reader. Then he ordered all the microfilm that's in the footnotes in this book and sat in his house and read it. You're the first person to interview him for the preview. And what he shows in this book is exactly what he said. That order wasn't worth the paper it was written on until the soldiers made it work. People say Lincoln freed the slaves. No, they didn't. Those brothers, thousands of them, sailed in there with General Granger. And if you think that the people who heard Granger's lieutenant read that order, Special Order Number 3, which, by the way, goes a lot further than the Emancipation Proclamation, because General Granger's order, read by Major Emory, his lieutenant, says black people are free, says that you have absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and former slaves. The Emancipation doesn't say that. The 13th Amendment doesn't say that. And then it goes on to say you are to work for wages. That's not in the 13th Amendment. Hell, that's not even in the 14th Amendment, which is way off. But then it also says, now don't come over here to the Union Army ranks and come over here and think that we're going to give you all anything, which is a little condescending. But the point I'm trying to make is, even reading that, do you think that black people heard that from him? And that was the first time they heard that? No, those black soldiers were talking to black people as they were coming across to Texas. And that's critical. Another thing Gerald says, which is very important, and he said it right there, we want to emphasize this. That was 1865. Those white boys in Texas wanted to keep slavery going. So many of them kept it going through the end of 1865 into 1866. Those same black troops then turned, not north, they don't decommission, take off their uniforms, they turn south. And they are now at war with the puppet government in Mexico because the French have installed a puppet named Maximilian who wants to make slavery legal in France. And as Gerald said, all the Confederates are going to Mexico to regroup, and they're getting help from other places in the United States, including California. They're shipping arms to Mexico from San Francisco. Why? They look at the surrender of Lee to Grant in Appomattox in Virginia. They look at that as a temporary pause. They get ready to restart the Civil War. But those black troops in coming into Mexico to stop that French puppet governor, leader of Mexico, in combination with the Mexicans, this is the black and brown unity that we need to remember in these Texas elections, who then are still fighting 2 years from Juneteenth. June 19th, 1867, Gerald in his book calls it the second Juneteenth, and maybe the most important one. They capture Maximilian, and on June 19th, 1867, they execute Maximilian, return Mexico to Mexican rule, and end the threat of the Confederacy continuing the Civil War. This is so complicated. But I'll say one other thing, Roland, as we're talking about it. This holiday can never be made into an American holiday that is interpreted the same. They have basically done the equivalent of bringing Kwanzaa and mixing it with the 4th of July and putting it on Juneteenth. Because what I saw yesterday in these various parts of the country ain't got nothing to do with George Washington, ain't got nothing to do with any. It is the same spirit of Juneteenth that George Floyd, you and George Floyd, of course, both going to Jack Yates. Jack Yates, the formerly enslaved African, who was one of the people who bought Emancipation Park where they celebrated the first Juneteenth in Houston. It's the same spirit of the black folks who barbecued all that food and made all that red drink. It has nothing to do with waiting for anybody, as we heard. And this holiday, I think it could really upset the calendar in terms of federal holidays, because I saw black people saying, hey, I don't know what y'all doing, but this is our holiday.
You know, it's quite interesting, Julian. Eric Erickson, who big time white conservative evangelical, he tweeted this out. I got a kick out of this when he tweeted it. He said, let me see if I can find it. He sent it out this morning, and it was about Juneteenth. And, well, let's see if he kept the tweet up. I'm sure he did. Let's see here. Let me find it, because I think y'all going to really crack at this one. He basically said that his friends really did not care a blip about Juneteenth, or he felt that they didn't think it was worthy. Now, mind you, he's also been sitting here all upset at Fox News because of some some tweet that the story that they did on. Matter of fact, did Eric delete his tweet? Hold up. I know I responded to his. Well, let me see if I can find it on my timeline. I'm trying to see. I guess my folk got a hold of his tweet after I posted what I did, and they must have lit that behind up. I'm trying to. So here it is. Oh, this is what he tweeted. No, that's the one about the January 6th. I'm looking for it. Okay. All right. I'm still looking. I'm like, where'd that tweet go, Eric? Because I literally had to chastise him because he said that a lot of his friends did not feel as if Juneteenth needed to be celebrated. And he said, well, look, I'll just be happy to take the day off and something to that effect. And I just had to just let him know, Julian, I said, and it's no shock to me, Eric, that your friends would say that.
You know, as you said earlier, Roland, this is what happens. This is now one of 12 federal holidays. People who work for the federal government get a day off. Many of them will take the day off. They don't care about Juneteenth or anything else. That's called their business. Many people will get an education because most newspapers, when you have a federal holiday, they're going to write about it. They're going to say things about it. And so more and more people are going to be educated. The likes of Erickson, whatever his name is, the likes of him are too dumb to pick up a newspaper and read something, too dumb to learn, and too basically absorbed in their own ignorance to understand history. But what we do know, and I do hope that Greg Carr is right, and that this does not go the way of American holidays, as in, I was Googling earlier today and saw somebody had some Happy Juneteenth cards. Some company named Big Dot Productions out of Wisconsin. So you know those probably not black people. Happy Juneteenth cards, give me a you-know-what break. I mean, that's just absurd. First of all, I don't use the word happy in Juneteenth, except I use joy, joyful Juneteenth, joy that our ancestors were able basically to create the red soda water, the ribs, all that, and to find something to celebrate in the face of oppression. But happy Juneteenth? I don't think so. So, you know, there are going to be those who are going to just use it as a day off. There are going to be those who use it as a day a day of learning. And I'm not mad at anybody, because does everybody who celebrates Memorial Day do something about veterans? Does everybody who celebrates President's Day do anything about presidents? So if the white ignorant want to simply say they don't care, they'll take the day off, let them. But increasingly what we're going to see, and it's a beautiful thing to see, is as these people gathering, people remembering, people sharing the stories that they shared. Sheila Jackson-Lee was with us yesterday when we did a reparations conversation at Shiloh Baptist Church. She was with us virtually, and she talked about the slave narratives and why Juneteenth and reparations were so important to her. And I would say to folks, that's what we need to be doing on Juneteenth, reading those slave narratives, understanding what happened, what was taken, because now we are empowered to give it back.
So this is what he tweeted on Macongo. Some of my friends don't think Juneteenth should be a national holiday. I don't care. It's a day off work. If we got off work a whole month for Pride, I'd make funfetti cakes and vacation all month. Now, this is the same person who's always complaining left and right about anything that's LGBT. Like, he been on a tear for like 2 weeks because Fox News did a story on a transgender teen. But again, what I need people to understand is Ronald Reagan opposed a federal holiday for Dr. King's birthday. Don't get it twisted because Ronald Reagan signed it into law. He adamantly opposed it. Senator John McCain voted against it. Arizona was against it. The Super Bowl got pulled out of Arizona because of their objection to an MLK holiday. They lost all that money and they had to scramble to get it back. So what I'm laying out is, again, for the people who are sitting here saying, well, it doesn't mean anything, we get to remind America of its original sin. And to Julian's point, Congo, every television station, newspaper, magazine, website, they are not going to be able to write about or broadcast about Juneteenth and overlook slavery and overlook the reality of what slavery did and the economics. And so what our responsibility is to ensure that Juneteenth does not turn into MLK Day, which for me has become America's civil rights mascot bobblehead figure where, where we strip Dr. King of his radicalness, we strip him of his militancy and somehow make it into something else. No, it's a little hard to strip the slavery out of Juneteenth.
Absolutely. And you know what's beautiful about this is when I was thinking about what Dr. Carr said, I didn't know that the Juneteenth that the commission's colors were red, white, and blue or something, because like you, like everybody he saw, none of us were ever thinking about that when we were thinking about Juneteenth. It's always been, you know, red, black, and green, and the yellow, like you said. Look, we also have to be mindful of the fact that what is the backdrop happening in America right now as we celebrate and recognize Juneteenth? All of the banning of books that is happening, all of the removing of Black history that people are attempting to do in all of our schools. When Trump was in office, and he started banning things about talking about diversity. I'm going to corporations and doing my trainings, and people are saying, no, you can't say that this time, you can't say this, you can't say that. Like, that's the backdrop. And, you know, Biden came and changed it, got rid of that executive order. But we are in the midst of a fight to preserve our contributions to this country that we built for free. And so when you get an opportunity with a holiday like this, we have to seize it. We have to seize the narrative. And like you said, Roland, it's only going to happen if we continue to control the narrative. I'll be very honest with you. All of the news shows I watched today, MSNBC, CNN, and some of them opened up with Happy Juneteenth, and they were saying things, oh, today as we honor Juneteenth, and then they'll go straight to a story about Ukraine. Or they'll go straight to a story about Trump. And every time I heard these stations mention Juneteenth, I had to change the channel today because I knew they weren't going to get to Juneteenth until the last 3 minutes of the show to try to recognize it in some way, shape, or form. And you know, we appreciate little efforts, but we have the Black Star Network. We have the platforms now. We have the ability to call out the Bill Nyes and the Eric Ericksons and all of that. And we must take advantage of this because this is on the shoulders of our ancestors. This is not like MLK, like you said. This is us representing and fighting for our people. And so this is a day, if we continue to keep this in the memory, talking to my kids about this, this can be something that'll be powerful for decades and centuries to come. And again, it's happening at the backdrop of all of these senators and principals and superintendents doing their best, doing the most to rip our history out of the books.
And that really is it, Jeff. And what I keep trying to walk folk through, I'm not saying the policy doesn't matter. What I am saying is use the mass gatherings of Juneteenth to push the policy. Use the mass gatherings of Juneteenth and do what Reverend Barber does with the Poor People's Campaign. Data collection. Don't just have a concert at the Hollywood Bowl if you're not collecting the data on who is there. Don't just have a party at this concert at this venue. No. If you show up, collect names and addresses and emails and phone numbers. And so now when it's time for us to move on the school board, or the city hall, on the county commissioner's court, on the state legislature, on the federal government, you've created a database. That really is the whole point. Don't make, as Tom Joyner and others say, you can have a party with a purpose. And so that's the issue for us. We cannot lose sight of what Black folks in Texas have always done and said, freedom ain't over. We will use Juneteenth as an annual rallying cry to achieve freedom.
Roland, that's why it's important for us to have venues like this, and why we celebrate Black Star Network, because it represents freedom. There's something that Dr. Malvo said about the difference between happy Juneteenth and a joyful Juneteenth, and it goes hand in hand with what Dr. Omekongo said. This is us. when we look even spiritually at the difference between happiness and joy, happiness is a temporary circumstance. So your circumstances can change and people can take away that. But when you're operating from a space of joy or joyfulness, you are working from a deep, profound, and abundant source that never ends. I got to make a comment on my brother's fresh haircut because it took me back to my childhood. And it's a crisp fade, and it reminded me to go back to some words that our barber from Old South Nashville used to tell me, the late great ancestor, Brother Eddie Frierson, whose mother, Zuli Ursary, was a queen mother as a set of 5 with our own mother. And Frierson used to tell us, I didn't understand it as a child. He used to always say, son, the mistake that was made is they didn't free the slaves. They just turned us loose. And I never really understood what he meant by that. And there are moments where it comes flooding back to me in adulthood. And one of the moments was my Saturday celebration of the Juneteenth holiday. I spent the better part of the morning in the back of the Infinity Center, outside this window that I'm pointing to now, in the basement outside with the plumber's snake. And I was pushing the plumber's snake down into the drain so that I could clear the sewage that had backed up over the last week. This house that we're in was a former residence built by an exceptional Black doctor, Dr. Horace Marion Frazier, first head of pathology at Meharry Medical College, his wife Eloise. They came here, this house, bones are older than mine. And my buddies in the text thread sent me texts, and they were like, hey, happy Juneteenth, celebrate today. What are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? And I got back pictures of people who were out at festivals and kicking it and just having a ball, and they were doing line dancing. It was great. I sent a picture of me in some overalls with a fishing hat with a plumber's sewer auger running down a main line. And one of my buddies sent me a text back. He said, man, I'm so sorry. And I talked to him later. I said, no, man, this is joyful. Why? Because I understand now what Eddie Frierson was saying about freedom. Freedom is a constantly moving state that has to be maintained. So yes, I could have been in the park with the vendors. I could have been dancing. I could have been doing some things with my family, which I eventually did later. But freedom versus turn loose. Turn loose is the reason why so many of us went back to the plantation, because we were not given the 40 acres and a mule to maintain and to own. It's why we go back to the plantation now, because we're fearful of maintaining and our institutions at our independent spaces. The reason why I joyfully went down in that sewer is because I know that every Monday through Friday, 24 young Black kids are in this building learning how to act out on a stage instead of a street corner. A group of professional adults are falling through here on a regular basis, empowering people and teaching them how to buy homes, how to build wealth, how to send a society around their culture. And guess what? The cost of freedom, if it's me going out to the sewer, it's going out to the sewer. But I do it joyfully because that gift of maintenance is what I remember when I realized that nobody can tell me to leave this building. Nobody can tap their watch and say, stop liberating your people. Nobody can stop us from coming and going on these 4.9 acres. This is what we talk about when we remind people that Juneteenth is not just a holiday, it is a recognition that there were free people on that island in Galveston who fought through those the last 50 years of laws that made it so that you had a choice. Choose to leave the state, choose your own master, or we will snatch you and assign you a master. You had to dodge the pirates who were using the island of Galveston to continue the slave trade, the triangular slave trade system, after it was over. So when they made a way with those 75,000 troops to find freedom, they built communities, they established communities. And we are gifted with this holiday from the brave people of Texas who kept it alive and kept it ours. And we are now encouraged to do the same, to continue to find the joy in freedom every single day.
All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're in Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281. I want to bring up my next guest. He is out of Washington State. He is, of course, former head of the Seattle King County NAACP. Carl Mack is an historian. Carl, your issues with Juneteenth. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts about this action today. What are the issues?
I think they're historically absolutely incorrect, and I think they're insulting to us as a people. And so
who's incorrect?
Those who, the Congress, that bill passing was absolutely incorrect.
So what should it have been?
Okay, so the bill says, and what is being taught, and I'll just give you specifically in the state of Washington. And first of all, Roland, let me be clear. I have absolutely no problem with Juneteenth. My problem is the historical efforts that are being made and what's being surrounded. I call it the misrepresentation of Juneteenth. And so what happened in the state of Washington is they passed similar legislation, and this legislation has been passed a lot throughout this country. And in the state of Washington, similar to what they just did in Congress, they said that the legislature intends to designate Juneteenth as a statewide holiday celebrating the end of chattel slavery. So what people have been taught about Juneteenth is that those of our ancestors who was enslaved in Galveston, Texas, number one, they were the last blacks to be enslaved in this country. Number two, that they got the word a year and a half late after President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Both of those things historically are just incorrect. There is no other way to put it. Now, all one has to do is to understand this. Slavery ended in this country on December 6th, 1865, 6 months after Juneteenth. Now, going back to the Emancipation Proclamation, which everybody seems to get so twisted, keep in mind what Lincoln said. Lincoln said, for those states in rebellion against the Union, and there were 11 of them, but in the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln only mentioned 10 of them. And the only reason he only mentioned 10 is because the 11th state that he didn't mention was Tennessee. He didn't mention them because the Union already had control of Tennessee. So he said, for those states in rebellion against the Union, slavery is now free, over. Now, keep in mind, there were 4 border states in which slavery was still practiced. Those border states were Maryland, Missouri, Kentucky, Kentucky, and Delaware. So when Lincoln said that to him, I want you to imagine this, and you don't have to imagine. This is just a fact. When those 11 states left the Union, they didn't act as 11 individual states. They formed a confederacy. And when they formed a confederacy, in effect, they formed their own nation, which means they elected a president, Jefferson Davis. They elected a vice president, Alexander Stephens of Georgia. They wrote a Confederate Constitution. They were their own nation, Brother Roland. So when Lincoln issued, quote unquote, an executive order trying to tell them what to do, that's like the Prime Minister of Canada trying to tell the United States citizens what to do. He didn't have any authorization. That's why it took a war. So that's why I'm saying to you that when the news is that they got the word a year and a half late, it didn't matter. The Confederacy were their own nation. They didn't give a damn what the United States said, what Lincoln said. That's why it took the war. Now, as far as them being the last blacks enslaved, I just heard your last guest. I've heard all of you say how important it is to get it right. Today, there's a movement that has swept this country that we should all be proud of, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Do we think that Black lives just started mattering? Because let's go back to what happened with the Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln said that in those states not in rebellion against the Union, slavery is still legal. Keep that going. 2 of those states were Delaware and Kentucky. 2 of them was Maryland and Missouri. And keep in mind, West Virginia wasn't a state when the Civil War started. It became a state after Virginia seceded. And those 48 counties didn't want to secede, so they became a state after the Civil War. So now let's look at those 5 border states. Maryland, on November 1st, 1864, before the Civil War ended, Maryland abolished slavery. Missouri, on January 11th, 1865, before the Civil War ended, they abolished slavery. West Virginia, the newly entered slave state, on February 3rd, 1865, ended slavery. The Civil War ends on April 9th, 1865. 2 months later, Granger rides into Galveston, Texas, and issues General Order Number 3, which we now call June 19th. I ask you to remember what was going on in Kentucky and Delaware after the Civil War. What was going on in Kentucky and Delaware after Juneteenth? I'll tell you, Roland, there were 225,000 of our ancestors still enslaved, and they did not taste freedom until December 6th, 1865, when Georgia became the 27th state to ratify the 13th Amendment. That is my problem with what is going on in states all across this country, and that is my problem about what just happened in the United States Congress. If you want to designate a date in which all black folks can celebrate freedom, that date, as far as I'm concerned, as far as history appears to be concerned, is December 6th, because that is the day in which Georgia ratified the 13th Amendment. Now, as it applies to Delaware and Kentucky, keep this in mind, Roland. Delaware didn't ratify the 13th Amendment until 1901. Kentucky ratified the 13th Amendment in 1976. And the state that I'm from, Mississippi didn't ratify the 13th Amendment until February 7, 2013. So, do I have a problem with Juneteenth? Absolutely not. Do I have a problem with the historical inaccuracy of it? Every part of that I got a problem with.
And that has been, first of all, like for years, Lincoln freed the slaves. Well, again, and there were people who took exception to Lerone Bennett and others who corrected that. Frankly, what we have folks in this country with a bumper sticker version of history. The reason I think you see the focus on Juneteenth is I think it goes back to this here, because Texas became the first state to actually make it a state holiday. And so what then happened was there were other people who wanted to recognize that fact. And so all of a sudden, Juneteenth events then went out. For everybody to understand, Juneteenth was a Texas holiday. To your point, what you just laid out, that was specific to Texas. When General Granger arrived on the shores of Galveston, of the beach in Galveston, and delivered that particular announcement. I think what happened was other people gravitated to that, and then it then became this sort of all-encompassing moment to say, okay, here's something that actually recognizes slavery or the ending of slavery in this country. But you're absolutely right. And I think I believe now, the opportunity is to, in the words of Paul Harvey, now tell the rest of the story.
Absolutely. So listen. So Roland, the thing that the congressman, I think it's Johnson, I'm not sure your last guess was.
Former Senator Doug Jones.
Okay, Doug Jones. What you and Doug Jones agreed on a lot was it's important to get it right. Today, we as black folks want to say Black Lives Matter. Then what about the 225,000? Now, I will give you just a little pushback on why Juneteenth took off. I think part of what you said is right, but the rest of the story is this. We all know that our history has not been taught.
Right.
So to what Doug Jones said, there's a lot of black folks that don't know the scholarship of our experience in this country.
Oh,
That's
no doubt. Oh, no doubt.
And so once we didn't know it, and somebody comes in and tells the myth that these were the last blacks enslaved, they got the news a year and a half later. Well, we just took off and ran with it. And then now, Roland, on May 25th of 2020, well, that gave another steroid injection to the myth behind Juneteenth. And that day was the day that Rodney King, George Floyd was murdered. Now you got white guilt everywhere, and white folks want to do something. Damn it, let's just make Juneteenth a holiday. That's fine. But it didn't start with that. I would tell you this. Go back and look at the 105th Congress of the United States. There was a senator from the state of Mississippi named Trent Lott who introduced legislation similar to what was just passed, and it clearly said, June 19th, the day that slavery officially came to an end. Then over in the House, in that same year, I believe it was 97, in that same year, now you had J.C. Watts in the House introduced a joint resolution that said the exact same thing, that Juneteenth is the date on which slavery finally came to an end. So I'm not trying to play the technicalities here. But what I am saying is in the spirit of Harriet Tubman.
Right.
They asked that sister, baby, why would you keep going back? You free. And she said, how could I be free when my people ain't free? Well, how in the hell can we celebrate Juneteenth as the day on which slavery ended when there were over 225,000 of our folks still enslaved in the state of Delaware and Kentucky?
Well, I dare say
that is my problem.
I dare say the same as how we celebrate July 4th as Independence Day. And as Frederick Douglass said, what does this mean to the slave on July 4th? And so, but here's the last point I'll make, and this is very simple. What you laid out is why you got to have black-owned media. Is why because here's the piece. The bottom line is, and you already see it. I know ABC is having a big Juneteenth primetime show. All of a sudden, trust me, you're about to see businesses all across America. And here's the deal. I'm just laying in the cut because I'm telling you, every company that wants to try to profit off of Juneteenth, I'm gonna hit all of them saying, where's your black spin? Where's your black-owned spin? See, that's the other deal. It's just like if a business out there all of a sudden dropping Kwanzaa commercials, you got to be asking how much money you spending with black-owned companies. Not giving away. So this is why we also have to have our own media where we can actually have this conversation, because this ain't gonna happen on MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS.
Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it, Roland. And to your point, let me say this. I know that you know the Bennett family who owns the Seattle Medium and KRSZ out of Seattle. Okay, so I wrote an op-ed piece about what I just explained to you all. Not one white newspaper would pick it up, but that got picked up by the Seattle Medium, the black-owned press. And I've always been a huge supporter. In the same way, I listened to the pride that you all had about the legislation being passed. But now we as brothers and sisters right now on your program are going through a learning moment where we're going, damn, maybe I didn't know what Brother Mac was saying, but we're respecting that. And look, I don't expect you to trust what I'm saying. Just go back and verify.
No. But I'm saying, but here's the moment. To me, this is the moment. And I'm gonna bring my panel in after this. The moment for us is this here. This is now, just like that white retired lieutenant colonel when he gave the speech on Memorial Day, and when he told the history of Memorial Day and they cut his microphone because he talked about it was freed, it was actually slaves who actually started Memorial Day, and then they cut his mic. This is where we now use the bully pulpit. And so when folks say, hey, in slavery, actually that's not the truth. So here's my whole deal. This is where we can use the day to say, first of all, there should be a day that speaks to slavery in America, but we gonna also correct the story because even when we use the word we were freed, we actually weren't. That's why I say all the time that we were for the first time, black people were technically fully free Americans in 1970. It took going through Jim Crow, the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, took all of those different things. That's why I say technically fully free, and that leads to a whole other conversation about freedom.
But I'll say this, Roland. I'll give you just a little pushback. There is no debate over what chattel slavery was.
Oh yes, I got it.
And as such,
no, that's why I said freedom.
Debate.
That's why I said freedom.
Right. But there is no debate what chattel slavery was. And all I'm saying is on December 6, 1865, that is the day that chattel slavery in this country ended for our ancestors.
Got it. And what I'm saying is we should use the day to tell the whole story and not keep allowing his story to be told. Carl Mack, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
No problem, my brother. Thank you.
They've been trying to erase black political power since Reconstruction. Now the Supreme Court is helping them finish the job. First came Shelby County versus Holder in 2013, the ruling that gutted the Voting Rights Act. Then came Brnovich in 2021, another ruling, another piece torn away. Now comes Calais, the case civil rights leaders warned could cripple the last major federal protection against racial vote dilution, and within days, Tennessee eliminated its only majority black congressional district. Louisiana, South Carolina, Alabama. The same strategy is spreading across the South. The old Jim Crow used poll taxes and literacy tests. The new Jim Crow uses gerrymandered maps, voter roll purges, polling place closures, and court rulings that make black communities politically invisible. 1965 was Freedom Summer. This is Freedom Summer 2.0, because they are still trying to erase black political power, and we will not bow.
Juneteenth, of course, is the date that Texas slaves found out they were actually free. It's celebrated every June 19th, of course, which is this Saturday. Now, we are one step closer to Juneteenth becoming a national holiday. And in Galveston, they have the Juneteenth Legacy Project. Their mission is to properly explain the story's origins while preserving its historical and contemporary relevance. Joining me now is Juneteenth Legacy Project historian Sam Collins III. Sam, I had a brother on yesterday who talked about how the story has gotten wrong, how people say, oh, Juneteenth, actually that ended slavery. And he said yesterday, no, it didn't. It was really in December. Juneteenth is specifically tied to when slaves in Texas were told. Yes or no?
Yes, when Gordon Granger arrived here on June 19, 1865, and issued General Order Number 3. The important part of the story that we rarely talk about is that 75% of the soldiers that came into Texas were USCT, United States Colored Troops, that brought the message of freedom to Texas.
So what do you want to make sure gets told? And so exactly what is y'all goal with this?
To expand the narrative with this 5,000 square foot mural that's on the side of the old Galveston Square building, painted by artist Reginald Adams and his team, the creatives, Kadavian Baylor, Dantrell Boone, Joshua Bennett, Cherry Meekins, and Samson Adenube. We want to expand this Juneteenth story and tell it in a way that is more complete, to tell the full American story, because too many people don't know that the USCT were walking the streets of Galveston and spreading the message of freedom.
First
and they went on out into Texas.
One of the things that I'm already seeing and people are talking about, obviously, all of a sudden, you know, the Congress embracing Juneteenth. And yesterday, what Carl Mack said yesterday, and I agree with, is that what we have to do is we got to make sure that we control the narrative. I've always said my issue with around MLK days when these folks, especially these Republicans, all of a sudden start dropping their MLK quotes and things along those lines, and they turn MLK into this sort of civil rights bobblehead, as opposed to showing how he was a strong, moral, courageous freedom fighter. And so how do we ensure that we are controlling the narrative and Juneteenth is not turned into, let's just be real clear, an opportunity for businesses to make money, to sell mattresses, to sell shirts, and to sell all kinds of different things? Because you're already seeing, even in mainstream media, all of a sudden embracing Juneteenth with Juneteenth specials in prime time, things along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to control the narrative. This is a struggle here in Galveston I'm having with telling the true history of Juneteenth. The painting in the mural represents icing on the cake. On the building, you see the icing, but as a historian, it's my job to tell you what else is in the cake. See, behind the paint and plaster are the bricks that make my heart ache. And these are the bricks that laid the foundation of this economic system in America that we call capitalism. And you don't always see the bricks, but you always know that the influence of the enslaved people are there. So Saturday at 4 o'clock, we're going to dive deep into this conversation with Dr. David McNally from the University of Houston and Joe McGill from South Carolina and myself. We're going to have a deep conversation. Everybody wants to come to the party and the celebration Saturday, and we welcome you to Galveston. But we want to dive deeper into this conversation, to your point, so that we could control the narrative.
And so while these things are happening on the national level, what is your advice to folks who are watching to ensure the exact same thing doesn't happen, where it becomes whitewashed and all of a sudden you really don't have the full story being told?
Well, I think it's very important for those that have been telling this story for decades in our communities. In most communities, there's a local historian that may not have been an academic person or teaching in the school, but there's an organization here like the Cultural Center. They've been working in this community to tell this history story for 30 years, and it's important that we support organizations in our community that have been doing the work. Last year, Juneteenth became popular, and all of the money is flowing into all of these new organizations, and we need to make sure that our existing organizations that have been on the road, the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation has been in existence since 1994. Like I said, NIA's been here for almost 30 years, started in 1992. We need to make sure that this money is being funneled into these organizations so that they could tell their stories and not have this paternalistic relationship in which when funding comes in, they tell us what we can and cannot say. We have to create our own platforms and tell our own stories, stand flat-footed and tell the truth. I would rather fast on my feet than eat steak on my knees. So be careful taking funding that is going to require you to be quiet. Remember that you must speak up and speak truth to power in this moment.
All right, Sam Collins, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281. All right, folks, welcome back to Jacksonville, Florida. Roland Martin Unfiltered, broadcasting from here. Juneteenth, I'm a native of Texas. We were the first state to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. It is the only state, it's the only actually holiday that actually recognizes or speaks to slavery. Now, keep in mind, we're celebrating a holiday where black people in Texas found out 2 years late, okay, 1865. And so after Texas made a state holiday, thanks to the late Representative Al Edwards, my frat brother, other states begin to celebrate Juneteenth in different ways. Now, there's an effort, folks want to make it a national holiday. Now, y'all might remember when that fool Donald Trump said that part of his little Black Platinum plan would make Juneteenth a national holiday. It actually could already be a national holiday if Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin would not have blocked it in the United States Senate. Well, Opal Lee, many call her the grandmother of Juneteenth. She, of course, has been traveling around the country trying to make this an issue. She was in Washington, D.C. today at a news conference at the National Press Club. She joins us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Opal, how you doing?
I'm alive and kicking. What about you?
I am doing great. And so, again, look, I'm 52 years old. I've been celebrating Juneteenth my whole life. I've been a native of Texas. And so for a lot of people who didn't know about Juneteenth, it was a way of life for us black Texans. And so your effort, trying to make this a national holiday, how's it going thus far?
Today was a red letter day because the House and the Senate have put the bill up again. And so we are rolling. We figure we're going to have Juneteenth a national holiday by Juneteenth 2021.
So, look, it's not like it can't get passed. And so who is leading the legislation? Who do you think is going to make it happen?
Well, in the House, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee is heading that. And in the Senate, we've got Tina Smith, and Martin, and Cornyn. Those are the ones in the Senate who are backing it.
So, again, it is something that is important, but beyond just...
Booker.
Go ahead. You said Senator Cory Booker. Go ahead.
He's the one backing it, too. So all these good people, it means that soon and very soon, we're going to have it a national holiday. And the fact that some 49 states have some type of celebration of Juneteenth and all overseas. So it's long overdue.
I certainly agree with you. It is long overdue. We appreciate all the work that you're putting into traveling this country, trying to make Juneteenth become a national holiday.
I thank you for letting your viewers know, and we need everybody and his daddy to go and sign our petition, to Juneteenth.us and find the link where they can sign the petition, and that will make us have another 1.5 million signatures to take to Congress, and they won't think it's just one little old lady and her group trying to make it June holiday.
All right, then. Opal Lee, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Love you.
Thank you. Love you as well. You take care.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back on this Juneteenth. I'm here at the Navy Memorial where the folks at Apple Plus are going to be having a screening of the season 2 opening episode of their show Swagger. And so I'm going to be moderating the panel, so we're going to be showing you that later. This will be starting in a few minutes, the reception, and then, of course, they'll have the screening. So I look forward to having that conversation and showing it with you, and we appreciate Apple Plus partnering with us on this. This is the first thing we've done for them, and hopefully we're going to have lots more of events with the folks at Apple Plus. As I said, it is Inauguration Day. Excuse me, Juneteenth Day. And we've been, of course, busy. I was in Houston over the weekend attending a variety of events. I was at Emancipation Park on Saturday, 10 acres of land that was purchased by folks freed slaves of African descent. And it was a great time there. We had our forum at the Power Center, Black-owned Power Center, taking place there on Saturday as well. And today, events have been taking place all over, really Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it's not really Juneteenth. It's really Juneteenth weekend. And one of the things that I keep trying to say to people, and this is critically important. Typically when you hear us people talk about the Tom Joyner Fantastic Voyage Cruise or Essence Festival, they call it a party with a purpose. Well, we're talking about, this is about having a purpose with a party. And I've said that we must keep the focus on what this day is about. Reverend Dr. William J. Barber actually said that today is a somber day. It's not a celebratory day. Some people have said, don't say Happy Juneteenth. They say we should be commemorating this day as well. And so you have different perspectives on it. But the important thing is for us to understand that this is a historical day. And it's not a day where we solely talk about folks who were slaves or those who were enslaved in Texas being freed. Juneteenth represent an acknowledgement of this day, but also the continual quest for freedom. Joining me now, along with my panel, Dr. Peniel Joseph. Doc was at Tufts for a long time. Now he is the inaugural Associate Dean for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at that little school in Austin. They call it the University of Texas, but those of us who are Texas A&M graduates, we call it TU. Yeah, we don't give it that much credit, Peniel. Just want to let you know that. So that's, being a native Texan, a Texas A&M graduate, I long say black and burnt orange do not go together. But congratulations on your job. Yeah, no. We don't. So you throwing in little hook 'em horns. No, this is called saw horns off. That's what that is. Saw horns off. That's how we do it. All right, let's get right into it. You wrote a piece where you said that now that you are in Texas and based upon additional knowledge and information and research, you now have a much greater, deeper, and broader understanding of what Juneteenth was and is.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing we can agree on, Brother Roland, is that, we are supporting Juneteenth. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned about Juneteenth is that Juneteenth really gives us an aspiration for freedom beyond emancipation. And so what I mean by that is that when we think about black folks, the story we tell ourselves, or we've been told, is that there were these 250,000 black folks in Texas who didn't realize freedom had come, right? So they were sort of late to the party. And the real story is much deeper and more complicated. There were many black Texans who knew about liberation, they knew about freedom, emancipation, but they were caught within the belly of a dying Confederacy in Texas where there were battles being fought after the surrender of Robert E. Lee in April, in May, and parts of June in Texas. So what you get in the port of Galveston is Gordon Granger arrives with 2,000 troops to not just spread that news, but to provide reinforcements to protect black people who were self-emancipating all across the South, right? So when we think about the Emancipation Proclamation, it only liberates folks in parts of the United States, where the Union no longer has any control. Black people from jump, starting in 1863, and even earlier, of course, self-emancipated. They became the biggest resource for the Union Army, in addition to the 200,000 black folks who fought in the Civil War. So I think what I've discovered when you think about...
Actually, Peniel, 1 second. And when we talked to Gerald Horne, when he did his book on the Texas Revolution, he discovered that most of those troops who were with Granger were black soldiers.
Absolutely. They were part of the colored regiments. And so when people think about Juneteenth, they are part of the colored regiments who come to liberate black people. But even before they showed up in the port of Galveston on June 17th, black folks had known that there were colored troops because they had heard that there were colored troops. So in a lot of ways, when we think about the way in which Juneteenth unfolds in Galveston, it unfolds in multiple ways. Black people are hearing the news. Some are leaving plantations. Remember the three orders, when you think about General Order number 3, 1, absolute equality. Number 2 is stay on the plantations and somehow do labor contracts with the people who presume to be your owners. And number 3 is stay away from military headquarters and don't participate in any idleness. Well, the military headquarters in the context... In
fact, Peniel, hold on 1 second. I want to actually just read what he actually said when he issued order number 3. He said, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain, listen, folks, this is the order which people don't actually talk about. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. Now, Peniel, explain why that, frankly, was nuts.
Yeah, so that's an outrageous order in its totality, and it's a testament to black people that they really just move on number 1 and ignore number 2 and 3, because the idea that you're going to do labor contracts with those who defined you as a species of property is incredulous. The idea that you're not going to go to military headquarters and military encampments filled with colored soldiers who can give you news, who can give you resources, food, so many different things. People are trying to reunite with family. People are trying to do so many different things, and they're trying to escape from this vengeful, dying white Confederacy, which again, as late as May in Brownsville, Palmito Ranch, there were all these different battles being fought. So in a lot of ways, even in Juneteenth, that very first Juneteenth, before we start getting formal commemorations the next year, you see two things are happening at the same time. There is freedom, and then there's also backlash that's happening at the same time. And it's really, I think one of the things we see, you said you were just at Emancipation Park. I've been there too, and I went there to do the story for Texas Monthly. And one of the things you see about the 4 founders, Reverend Dibble and Jack Yates and Richard Allen and Richard Brock, they were all ministers. They were all surrounded by a strong black community, including black women who helped organize thriving church congregations so they could buy the 10 acres. So they were organized, and they were also black Republicans when Republicans were the party of abolition and anti-slavery during Reconstruction. They went to Republican national conventions. They were electors. They were state delegates. Some of them served on the city council. So you see that coming out of Juneteenth is this responsibility, not burden, to organize, to educate. When you think about so many different schools are created in that ferment in Texas. So I think the deeper, more inspiring story of Juneteenth is the way in which black people responded with radical political self-determination, even as there was a huge backlash from jump. I mean, you can see in that order is crazy once you get away from the absolute equality. They should have quit while they were ahead with that order. 2 and 3, anybody who's got any self-respect has no business listening to.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Juneteenth. We talk about freedom. We're not talking about just freedom from slavery. We're not talking about freedom when it comes to the right to vote, when it comes to being able to own homes, freedom to be able to walk and go where you are and not be accosted by crazy, deranged Karens and Kens around this country. It's also, when we talk about economic freedom, when you look at the numbers are stark. Black home ownership has never hit 50% in this country. Also, when you look at the home foreclosure crisis that took place in 2008, 2009, 2010, some 53% of black wealth was wiped out. Now, we spend money. We spend lots of money, but we also make a lot of other folk rich. When you hear me talking about the battle, even when it comes to advertising, okay? Y'all have heard me say this numerous times. $340 billion is spent last year. It's probably going to be $350 billion or almost $400 billion this year will be spent on advertising. Black-owned media gets 0.5 to 1%. So one of the reasons why you do not have a black-owned media company of the scale of a CNN or a New York Times or one of those companies is because capital wasn't there. See, a lot of people talk about access to capital, saying, oh, well, you need to be able to access capital to grow. Well, that's not always the case. You also need access to contracts. And so we have to understand that we have significant economic power, not just in terms of how we spend our money, but also how we leverage our money in the marketplace. And that's something that we always should be thinking about on this particular day, whenever there are events. And I've done this. People who brought me in the keynote, I will ask them the question, is that videographer, is that a black-owned company? The folk did the audio visual, was this a black-owned company? Are y'all utilizing black-owned caterers? Or y'all using a black-owned transportation company? See, I ask those questions because if black folks aren't doing that, well then, who is? Those of you who support the Black Star Network, y'all know the day we launched the network and I announced it, I had the people on the air. Look, understand, lighting system that's in here, black-owned company. Henry, give me a wide shot. You see this desk right here? This news desk right here was built by a black-owned set design company. That art that down there, that's Leroy Campbell, the art you see there. That green screen over there, that was a black-owned drape company. The artwork that you see in here, black artists. That control room in there, completely done by black engineering companies. And so the reality is, and we utilize black videographers, black editors, and now listen, there are other folk who work for me who are not black. But we make a concerted effort to actually talk to black people, use black people, invest in black people, and help their businesses grow as well. Joining us right now is Kevin Cohee, CEO and owner of One United Bank, the largest black-owned bank in the United States. And so he says emancipation really has to be looked at through 4 economic benefits. He joins us now from Los Angeles. Kevin, glad to have you on the show. And so how do you outline what those 4 economic pillars are?
Well, I'm not sure when you refer to 4 economic pillars, what you're referring to. But when I think about the economic paradigm we as Black people face today, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of others in helping to build our own communities. For example, corporations. I'm sorry. Corporations as an example. Corporations are more willing than ever to help Black businesses by doing more business with them. And I think there's a real opportunity to use holidays like Juneteenth to remind America of its obligation to Black Americans going back to when we were enslaved. We continue to overcome the vestiges of first slavery, then Jim Crow, and now we're challenged by living in a country where financial literacy is simply not taught. K through 12, we don't teach financial literacy, even though that's one of the most important topics that affects our lives.
Okay, so on that right there, when you say teach financial literacy, be specific. What is it that we should be talking about when we talk about financial literacy? That phrase is often used a lot by folks, but what does that actually mean? What does that look like?
Okay, what it means is K through 12, that we receive a specific curriculum that teaches us all the basic principles of finance, so that as very young children in high school will know about real estate transactions. Children in junior high school will know about stocks and bonds. Children in high school will know about things like trust. It's that lack of financial literacy that is probably the largest factor suppressing our economic growth right now.
Okay, so here's the whole deal. We know that that's not happening in schools. Okay, well, what should then be happening in terms of our community? Same thing we talk about Black history. We know what they're not teaching. The reality is they're not going to teach us financial literacy. The reality is when the Freedmen's Bank was set up after the end of the war, that actually was one of the role and responsibilities of the Freedmen's Bank to provide financial literacy for the freed people of African descent who were slaves. But the problem is, we know Lincoln was killed 2 months later, that racist Johnson came in and pretty much, and you had what modern day some $3 billion in Black assets was stolen as out of the Freedmen's Bank. And so we keep talking about we need it, but waiting on them to do it ain't gonna happen. So from a community standpoint, organizations, explain to folks who are watching how you think that should be taught, so we're not waiting on them, we can start doing it for ourselves.
Okay, well, specifically, it is happening. Over 50% of the states in the United States have adopted mandatory financial literacy requirements as a condition of graduation. So it is happening. We as Black Americans need to be the foremost advocates of ensuring that the rest of the states adopt legislation that require mandatory financial literacy. It's one of the most important issues facing us as a people. So we are making progress. Their legislation is passing. We should just be behind it. It's one of those issues that Black America is not thrown the full weight of its authority behind, even though we're one of the groups that will benefit most. Roland, just so I can be clear here, passing this legislation, it's been calculated, is worth $127,000 over a person's lifetime. So when you're talking about things like closing equality gaps, racial wealth gaps, income gaps, that kind of thing, the single thing is worth over $100,000 to each child that receives it over its lifetime. So we are in a position to advocate with state and local government to say, look, we're not playing around with you, okay? We are entitled to this kind of education. It's the most important thing that our people are going to deal with in their lives. With all due respect, you're not going to solve very many chemistry problems, very many biology problems, but you're going to be solving financial problems every single day for the rest of your life.
Right.
Teach us what we need to know. Teach our children what they need to know so we can be effective in society.
Right.
We dealt with slavery. Then you put Jim Crow on us. Then we dealt with Jim Crow. Now you're sitting there and running a society where you're not teaching us financial literacy, the most important skill we need to have to be effective as participants in this society.
Well, look, I've long said in a capitalist society, they want to keep some folks clueless on some of these issues compared to others. One more question for you before I go to my panel, and that is we talk about moving forward. I also believe it's critically important that we also move as a collective. What I mean by moving as a collective, it's utilizing our collective power. What I've said to numerous Black organizations is that when we're talking about, whether we're talking about advertising, if we're talking about venture capital, if we're talking about all these different areas. First of all, when you talk about venture capital in this country, venture capital in this country depends upon pension funds. So we talk about where's the money coming from? That's a lot of Black folks who are school teachers, city workers, county workers, state workers, federal workers. And so that money being invested, that's the money of a lot of those folks. And so we can change, I believe, private equity as opposed to trying to operate from the top, trying to hopefully they get religion by being safe from the bottom. No, if y'all don't have Black investment folks, then you're not going to have access to these dollars. Again, that's using our political power, our collective power. It's also what Dr. King said April 3rd, 1968, when he called it redistribute the pain. He made it clear, those who do not do business with us, we don't do business with them. And he said it. We don't need to throw a Molotov cocktail. We don't need to have an argument or a fight. He said, when we pull our money, then they will pay attention.
Well, and I agree with you. I do think it's critically important that we motivate both corporations and governmental entities to do business with Black people, period. Now, I do think that there's a real opportunity right now in this post-George Floyd environment. We are definitely seeing movement in corporate America, significant movement in corporate America, where they're doing much more business than they've ever done before, both in terms of providing capital, but also making their resources available to minority-owned companies to help them to improve the products and services that they're delivering. So there is progress being made. Our voices are being heard. We just have to, as you pointed out, we have to act as a coalition to speed up that pace of change.
Yeah, see, I'm not interested in waiting. I remember we were battling on the advertising front. And had a brother, he made a comment, he said, these things take time. And I said, bro, you 78. Every year, every day over 70 for you as a Black man is a bonus day. I said, I ain't trying to sit here and wait another 20, 30, 40 years. And so I think it's important for us to be pushing and prodding at the sense of urgency. I made it clear after the death of George Floyd. I said that the failure of the first Reconstruction, first of all, the success of the first Reconstruction was legislative. 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, the Reconstruction Amendments. Then, of course, you go to 1877, you have then usher in 92 years of Jim Crow. Then you get the second Reconstruction movement, which I call the Black Civil Rights Movement or the Black Freedom Movement. Well, guess what? That dealt with laws, Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, Fair Housing Act. But the money was still never dealt with. After the death of George Floyd, I said to folks, if you look at the failure of the first two, they never dealt with the money, and there was only a 3, 4, 5 year period where white folks did what was right, then all of a sudden it's kind of like, okay, we're clear. I said, let's not let that happen now. I said, this needs to be a sustained effort for a minimum of 20 years. I said, don't let off the gas, don't let up, but a lot of folks did. And now what we've seen is the attacks on DEI. We see the attacks on the Fearless Fund, the attacks on law firms and other corporate programs, because folks are saying, let's attack the economic underpinning that has created these opportunities for African Americans. We've got to make sure that we don't let that happen.
You are 1,000% correct. And we should do that. We should take advantage of things like Juneteenth Day. I mean, that's a holiday that celebrates our freedom. And as a byproduct of celebrating our freedom, it's a time for us to push for more diversity and inclusion in our economy. It benefits everybody. Getting rid of slavery was the best decision this country ever made from both a social and an economic standpoint. What you're talking about was what it takes to continue to build on that economic dividend that our society has. And what you're saying is that we have to represent ourselves effectively with the government and with corporations in order to achieve the things that we need to achieve. Here again, for us, it starts with give us the education, give us the knowledge. If you give us the knowledge that you should have given us, then we are so good as people and so effective that we're given a fair playing field that we will help to build America. We made America America. The reason America is directly because of Black people. This emancipation thing, that's why Juneteenth is a big deal. It's a celebration of America is the greatest country in the world. Why? Because it freed the slaves. That's what made us have the best team, to use a sports analogy.
Robert?
Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and the conversation is so riveting. I do have this question. I used to live in Chinatown when I lived in Chicago for a year, right there, 28th and Wentworth. And I noticed that when you would go into each of the shops there, everybody there, of course, was part of that same community. But in addition to that, they didn't have to have community conversations and symposiums about teaching financial literacy. They just had a 9-year-old working the cash register. And they made sure that everybody in their community was working towards that same goal. How can we move from kind of this obtuse level of conversations about having the conversation about financial literacy and transition that into just direct action where people can understand, well, the best way to teach your kids financial literacy to put them on the cash register when they're 10 years old and have them work through the bills and how to found a business directly with you. How can we reintroduce that as opposed to very much these kind of academic conversations I feel like we often fall into?
Okay. Make it mandatory that the public school systems teach our kids the information that they need to teach them. They owe us that. We're entitled to receive the training that we need to be effective in life. Okay, we dealt with slavery, we dealt with Jim Crow, we deal with a society that still has remnants of systemic racism. Let's make them teach us. Okay, once again, if a mandatory requirement to teach financial literacy in school is worth over $100,000 over the lifetime of a person. This single thing will change our ability to be effective. Of course, you're absolutely right. In families that have the benefit of being able to pass on financial literacy in a substantive way, those people have a clear advantage. There are numbers of communities. There's religious communities, that are very good at passing on knowledge anecdotally from person to person. We need real training, better than the anecdotal passing around of information, which is important, and it's a wonderful thing, and it will build in future generations, but we need the formal education process put to work to make sure that our children and our people have the knowledge they need to be effective in today's society. One more quick thing, okay? Our society has shifted, okay? Haves and have-nots have historically been determined by the kind of things we're talking about, race and religion and those kind of things. One of the phenomena that's happening today is the haves are now the people who are financially literate, and the have-nots are the people who are not. So that new bifurcation of society, we have to make sure that we're on the financially literate side of that equation, because it affects everything. It affects your ability to get jobs. It affects your ability to do things like start businesses. And so we're at a critical point now. Legislation is already out there. As I said, about 50% of the states have already passed it. Yes, does it have things it needs to work on? Absolutely. But the group that is in the best position, and it's one of the groups that will benefit the most from mandatory education requirement, is Black Americans. We should make them do it.
Rebecca?
Stop asking, say you're going to do it. We will not let you not educate our kids.
Got it. Rebecca?
Thank you so much for being on the show tonight. So in 2020, a lot of corporations, including JP Morgan Chase, decided that they wanted to announce equity commitments. So in 2020, JP Morgan Chase announced a $30 billion equity commitment. Since then, they've been partnering with minority depository institutions, namely Black banks, as a way to do like a joint depository or depository backing for Black banks. I have many questions about this program, but with you leading the largest Black bank in the country, is it in the best interest, in the best long-term interest for Black banks to partner with a JP Morgan Chase in this type of venture, or is it better for Black banks just to use federally backed funds in order to provide loans and other services to their customers?
Absolutely. Okay. I work with JP Morgan. I work with JP Morgan every single day. Okay. It's not, now the thing is, it's not just JP Morgan, but it's also banks like Citibank that have wonderful programs. They have, those types of companies are working toward fulfilling their commitments. They not only are providing capital to organizations, but they're providing their expertise, more importantly. And that's something that cannot be replaced. That expertise is what allows you to grow and prosper. But it's not just companies like them. It's companies like Google, companies like PayPal that are working with corporations, working with Black-owned businesses to make them better businesses, to improve their technology and improve their sales techniques. So the program you're talking about is real. Those millions and millions of dollars and tens of millions of dollars that you're talking about are in fact being invested, and you are seeing progress. Does it need to be more? Yes. That's why I'm like, hey, we need to be out. So we go celebrate Juneteenth. We need to be in the streets. There need to be large corporate celebrations so we can keep the issue of D&I in front of people, to let them know, hey, we're celebrating freedom. We're celebrating the fact that by people who were formerly enslaved to be emancipated, that created this wonderful economic opportunity. Let's take it, let's continue to build on that economic opportunity, which is taking the disenfranchised and giving them more opportunities to effectively participate in society. That was the bet on emancipation. Here again, as you all well know, during slavery was over half the economic backbone for over half of the country. We had a country, we had to shed that and make a big bet that by freeing the enslaved people, that we were going to have a stronger, better economy, and we were going to have standing in the world. The social benefit is that as a slave-based society, we would have no standing. Nobody, we would have no credibility. We would be inhumane. We would be brutal. We would be cold-blooded as a country. We couldn't provide leadership. So that was the social part of it. The economic part of it was that if we free the people, that the contribution to the economic growth of our society will be bigger than what we have in this cotton-based, slave-based economy. And it has. It's the best decision the country ever made.
Well, it was not an easy one, and it has not been easy since that Civil War took place, and we continue to have, of course, the 90 years of Jim Crow, and we still are battling to make this a more perfect union, and so that's what our aim is. Kevin, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
All right. Have a good one. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281. Yes, we're live today on Juneteenth. Why? Because y'all know white media not going to properly cover this black holiday, so that's why we do what we do. Of course, this has long been a state holiday in Texas since 1980. Of course, last year was the first year Juneteenth became a federal holiday. It is the only day that actually acknowledges the end of slavery in this country. That is when, of course, Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas on this date, 1865, to announce to all of the enslaved people, excuse me, in Texas, that they were free. Now, keep in mind, the folks, they kept slavery going for 2 years there because you did not have empowered folks there. And so the racists continued the institution that took place there. Now, again, President Joe Biden last year made Juneteenth a national holiday. Well, actually, it was 2021. Of course, it was passed by Congress. And so all of this has been going on. And you know, this is driving the folk crazy who can't stand CRT, DEI, and all that good stuff. And so the question then is, can Juneteenth actually be talked about in classrooms? Well, Chris Stewart is the CEO of EdPost, a network of education activists and influencers who demand better education and a brighter future. Favorite child, he joins us now from St. Cloud, Minnesota. Chris, the thing that jumps out here when we talk about Juneteenth is how Republicans have been doing all they can to actually stop the teaching of black history in this country. And so what is the impact of that on Juneteenth?
I mean, the impact on Juneteenth is that there are going to be a lot of teachers that self-censor themselves. They won't teach it. Some of them didn't want to teach it in the first place, so it becomes a good excuse to not do it. But for those that really do want to teach it, they have to fear that if a parent complains, if a community member complains, it could be even somebody not in the same community that can hear that it's going on in a classroom and complain to the state, that teacher could be in big trouble. So that's one of the effects and impacts. Straight up by law, though, it can be taught. It can be taught by law in all 50 states right now. The thing that makes it tricky is that only 12 states mandate teaching Black history, period. And many teachers say the reason that they don't do it is because it's not in state standards. And the even more tricky part is there are these really vague You mentioned them, anti-CRT laws, anti-black codes, written in the state laws that basically say if a white child is made uncomfortable by some of the teaching, if the teaching wanders into a way where it says that one group of people by their race oversaw another people by their race, that could be a problem too. So teachers just becomes more convenient and more easy to not teach it.
And again, we have seen these different attacks, and I'm sure this federal holiday is absolutely driving the racists crazy. Because of the holiday, you can't get. Now, granted, obviously school is out. You still have summer school, but it's kind of hard to get around a federal holiday.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I called my bank yesterday, and the message that they had on the bank was, we'll be closed tomorrow for the holiday. Now, every other holiday that they're closed, they name the holiday. We'll be closed for Christmas. We'll be closed for President's Day or whatever it is. But on this particular holiday, they don't even want to offend their customers by saying that it's Juneteenth. That tells you the reason why we need Juneteenth taught. Because if the majority population is going to be this ignorant about us, we can't be too. So we need our black teachers, our black schools, our black parents and community members, and our black churches just making this an issue. It's got to be part of everybody's agenda to make sure that black history gets fought for in the same way that other side fought for anti-black laws to be passed in their states.
Well, also I think it's critically important for people to understand that listen to those of us in Texas. Juneteenth was not about concerts and picnics, cookouts, barbecues, things along those lines. It was also about empowerment. It was about freedom. It was about voting freedom. It was about economic freedom, all aspects. And so that's what Juneteenth was about. And so I need people to keep that in mind as you now have nationwide Juneteenth celebrations.
I think what you just hit on, Roland, is one of the answers, though. We put a lot on schools and we put a lot on classrooms, and what we have learned as black parents and black people over time is that we are turning our kids over every day to schools that don't look like us. They weren't made for us. They weren't made to help us reach our highest potential. And because of that, we can't fully rely on them to give us the full black education that we need. I just want to give you your props. You've been the only relentlessly warrior type of person on the education part of this. It has basically made you a journalist and a public teacher. What you just said, what just came out your mouth is public teaching. And I just wish more people with a platform like yours at the size and the scale that you are at were kind of a warrior for us the way that you are on this particular issue, because everybody should be talking about it. We should be teaching ourselves and not waiting just for schools to do it. Well, the problem is that can't happen unless you own it. And the reality is when you look at a lot of the folks who are black, who have shows on networks, they do not control the show. They don't own the show. Their producers determine what's going on. And very few of those hosts truly have the power to do so. And I think that's also part of the problem. Look, I had a black host on a network show say that this person would have loved to have had me on the show, but her white producers did not like the title of my book, White Fear. And I was like, And I sent some notes, and the person said to me, you're preaching to the choir. I said, no, I don't need you to be the choir. I need you to be the senior pastor. Yeah, again, it's great to talk to you on Juneteenth, brother, because you prove all that wrong, though, right? You made a way where there's not a way. You built your own. You own yourself. That is actually the freedom story of Juneteenth, and that we all should be paying attention to. Prince said it. Own your masters. Don't let your masters own you. He walked around with slave on his face for a period of time. I'm sure you got more stories than that. And also, Roland, first of all, I just want to keep saying you play a pivotal role in this. But in your lifetime, you have watched how hard it is for us to get the MLK holiday, first of all. Absolutely. People think that was easy. They don't remember that it took work to even get that passed. And to see these Republicans go, well, Reagan signed it. He also opposed it. He had no choice to sign it because it was overwhelmingly approved by Congress, but that was not at all something that he wanted to do. And so I like to keep reminding folk of that. You ain't getting no credit. Matter of fact, I had some black woman on my Instagram page actually say that, oh, Trump fought for Juneteenth, but Biden got all the credit. And I'm like, you out your damn mind if you think I'm going to let you just get away with that flat out lie. No, he did not. And, it's like, so
so yeah, we ain't trying to hear that nonsense from these black MAGA folk.
No, and actually, you know what? It's just so good that you're there to call them out at a level in which we can be proud, because for many of us, we see this in our daily lives. We have to encounter ignorant people that we work with, that we report to, that we get jobs from, that we have to, get grants from if we're nonprofits, whatever. I do think our pathway to freedom is taking your story to heart. Like, be free, own yourself, teach yourself though, teach your own children. As much as you can, because schools should teach it, but they're not going to.
And that's why I say to all our people, don't just sit here and wait and rely on them to do any of this. We take the lead as well. Chris, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Folks, on this day, I cannot go without us recognizing this brother right here. Go to my iPad, Henry. This here is Texas State Representative Al Edwards. He is the father of Juneteenth. It was Al Edwards who carried the torch in Texas for years to get this to become a state holiday. Let's be perfectly clear. If there is no state holiday in Texas, there is no federal holiday in the United States. And so the Juneteenth begin to spread all around the country. This is the statue of Al Edwards, that State Representative Al Edwards, my good Alpha brother, that stands in Galveston, Texas, of course, where those Union troops came there. And so I just think it's important. But people need to understand this is not trying to say, oh, you're trying to take away from Opal Lee, who walked and campaigned for the national holiday. But you have to, if we're going to talk about history and the roots of Juneteenth, I do understand that it was a long fight in Texas for it to become a state holiday, because Juneteenth originates in Texas. And it was State Representative Al Edwards. He died 4 years ago. It was during COVID, and he passed away. He had been ill for quite some time, but it's important on this day. And I posted something on Instagram, and his son posted a comment and said, appreciate you recognizing my dad on this day. So we all must understand what that particular history is.
They've been trying to erase black political power since Reconstruction. Now the Supreme Court is helping them finish the job. First came Shelby County versus Holder in 2013, the ruling that gutted the Voting Rights Act. Then came Brnovich in 2021, another ruling, another piece torn away. Now comes Calais, the case civil rights leaders warned could cripple the last major federal protection against racial vote dilution. And within days, Tennessee eliminated its only majority black congressional district. Louisiana, South Carolina, Alabama. The same strategy is spreading across the South. The old Jim Crow used poll taxes and literacy tests. The new Jim Crow uses gerrymandered maps, voter roll purges, polling place closures, and court rulings that make black communities politically invisible. 1965 was Freedom Summer. This is Freedom Summer 2.0, because they are still trying to erase black political power, and we will not bow.
I want to talk to somebody who understands the importance of emancipation and liberation, someone who, of course, was involved in the protest in Mexico City in 1968 when they stood on that podium with their shoes off and their raised fist. That generated lots of attention. They actually really transformed their lives because America was not happy at all about what they did. And that, of course, is John Carlos. Always good. How you doing, Doc? Step right on over. How you doing? Good to see you.
See you, brother. Good to see you.
First of all, I just want to get your thoughts about the celebrations now across the country of Juneteenth. I'm from Houston, so we've been known about this here. But just your thoughts now about it being federal and being national.
Well, it's great that it's being national and being federal, but we have to put some teeth in there. We have to have some bite to it. To give us a day and not really give us our freedom, we still have a great fight ahead of us. Many people are celebrating, and really we haven't gotten our independence yet.
Well, that's why earlier what I said is we got to make sure that we control the narrative and that we're still in a quest for full freedom.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the only way we're going to accomplish that is when we come together as one. You know, we stated in Mexico City that we need unification. We're better, we're strong, we're wiser when we come together as one.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing is that again, when people talk about that, there was actually a lot behind that. That wasn't just take shoes off, raise your fist. There was a purpose behind it. It wasn't just an act.
Well, I think the purpose behind it was to squash what's happening right now in the state of Florida with the governor, with all his dissent, the conflicts that we have within the United States government right now versus Trump versus society, you might say. We talked about all of those things. We had a concern at that particular time. We had closed ears and closed minds. Now they see it live in their face. Now it's opportunity time for them to step up to save the world for their kids.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think one of the things that is important for us when we talk about what is going on in this country is it's going to require us to be involved, to be active and involved, and you can't just tweet about it. You got to actually fight for it, which also means organizing and mobilizing.
Absolutely. Organize, mobilize, and move forward. We have to realize that we setting the pace for our kids. If we don't move today, there's no future for our kids. Anything that our parents suffered, worked, was in bondage to give us these days, and then to sit back and think that we're going to sit down on our laurels and think that we have overcome everything, we're mistaken. We're fooling ourselves. We need to roll up our sleeves and get busy and fight for equality and justice. And God knows black people need justice and equality. If we miss it now, our kids will suffer down the line.
All right, then. John, always good to see you. Keep fighting a good fight, and we'll keep doing the same thing.
Do the same, bro. Yes, sir. You take care.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
On Friday, the nation will commemorate the only federal holiday that acknowledges slavery. Juneteenth is recognized as the day Union troops, along with a lot of black troops, arrived in Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865 to enforce General Order Number 3. The order announced that all slaves who were free upon the surrender of the last Confederate stronghold. This order arrived 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln's January 1, 1863 Emancipation Proclamation. Texas officials, racists there, just totally ignored that, and they kept enslaving people. The official end of slavery in America came 6 months after that, on December 6, 1865, with the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Now, a lot of people have talked about Opal Lee being the grandmother of Juneteenth. It's true, but remember, Juneteenth was a state holiday in Texas long before it became a federal holiday. In fact, it was June 7th, 1979, when in the last hour, on the last day of the legislative session, it passed in Texas. That was June 7th, 1979. The person who led that effort was longtime Houston State Representative Al Edwards. He, of course, fought for a number of years to get this to become a state holiday, and it finally happened. So 1980 was the first year it was celebrated as a state holiday in Texas. Over the years, until his death, Representative Edwards traveled around the country talking to other legislatures, telling them how they should make the move as well. Joining us now is his son, Jason Edwards, who is chair and president of the Juneteenth USA. Jason, glad to have you here. Part of this effort with Juneteenth USA is for your father not to be a forgotten person in this, correct?
Yes, thank you for having me on today, Brother Martin. Yes, Juneteenth USA is definitely here to advocate for the holiday, definitely to help nonprofits and for-profit institutions onboard the holiday to increase adoption of the holiday, but also to make sure that Texas history is taught about Juneteenth, and yes, to preserve my father's role in that in all of the rush of the federal holiday was lost, I believe, in that process.
And the reason I think that history is important, I said yesterday, I was at my parents' church in the Dallas area on Sunday, and they had a sister who got up and she gave the history of Juneteenth, and I was sitting there leaning on my mom. I was like, how she leave out? It was a Texas holiday. And when the service was over, I walked up there, and we actually happened to go to Texas A&M together. And she's not a native of Texas, and I said, hey, you left out something important, that it was a state holiday. She had no idea that it was a state holiday in Texas. And when I listen to these people complain about Juneteenth, I'm like, y'all, you need to understand, y'all can yell and complain, but understand that this was a Texas thing. That's why June 19, 1865 is so important. And what then began to happen was other African Americans in other states. It spread to Louisiana. It then spread to Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, other states as well, when people began to learn about it. So it has always been unique to Texas because of the circumstances.
That's very true. I mean, all of what you said is exactly correct. The holiday, when the holiday passed, Dad started Juneteenth USA in 1979. And I tell people when I speak to corporations, he didn't create Juneteenth, Texas. He didn't create Juneteenth Third Ward, where I grew up. He created Juneteenth USA, Juneteenth for the United States. And so the idea that that Juneteenth needed to be a federal holiday was his dream from the very beginning. And so his process of getting other states to adopt the holiday became evident to me when I was in college, because I would call him, and during Senate, he would be in New Mexico, or he'd be in Missouri. And he would say, I'd say, Dad, why are you in Missouri? He'd say, boy, I got this holiday passed in Missouri, and they're picking up the legislation. So I'm speaking on the House floor. And so what happened was when Dad finally, we had to take him out of the public eye due to a car accident, as you're aware. 45 states in the union were celebrating Juneteenth as a state holiday. That was before any of the leaders that are involved with Juneteenth today started their activities. And so I always tell people I appreciate what Miss Lee has done because she played an integral role. We had to pull Dad from the public eye before she started her walks around the country and around the state of Texas. And so, but the beautiful thing about how it all worked together, she was walking in states where Dad had already gotten the bill passed while she was still a school teacher in Dallas. And so she picked up when his health failed and brought what I call the power of the people to the holiday. There's three forms of power: political power, power of the people, and financial power. And she brought that power of the people attention to it, but the political path had been laid over a 40-year period before 1990. I mean, before 2020, when I believe she said in a documentary she got involved. But it was very important what she did. I commend anyone who's 90 years old that gets out in the Texas heat to do anything. And picking up Juneteenth and advocating for it was very special to watch her.
And again, I think what's critical here, what you just said, that 45 states had already began to celebrate Juneteenth. And so that groundwork had been laid, that been paved for it to go federal and for the national holiday. And one of the things that I've said since it became a federal holiday, that it was just critically important for people to learn about the history of it, because it really pissed me off when it happened. I saw these black people on social media. Didn't nobody ask for this? And I'm like, y'all don't know what the hell y'all talking about. And it was actually offensive to a whole lot of black folks from Texas.
Yeah. So I saw some of that energy, and what, Dad used to tell us this term about politicking when we were growing up. Anytime he was doing anything regarding politics, and Brother Martin, you've known him forever and has seen a lot of his political actions before he passed in his 27 years. The holiday is one of the tools in the quiver of making sure the United States honors our ancestors. The process, if as a community we watch the process of Americans having to pause, tell their kids, digest, recognize, and commemorate the impact that American-born citizens that were enslaved by its own government made an impact on this country, and not just breeze past it. Dad was inspired to make this a holiday because we would go from, I believe, Memorial Day and breeze right past to 4th of July. And our history was sitting right there in Texas, but it wasn't being recognized.
Well, and I think, again, what I tell people, what Juneteenth forces, it forces everybody to have to, at least once a year, speak to the issue of slavery in this country. And that's also why this day, Juneteenth, is critically important.
Yes. Now, that is probably the most impactful thing. So when people say, to your point, we didn't ask for this, the real point is use the day as a day of leverage, engage, educate. Voters that are educated as to what happened. There are many people who run companies that I'm in partnership with or in business with or in association with that don't know our history and don't know what we did for this country, and don't know about the Homestead Act, and don't know about a lot of things that happened at the beginning of this country, and how when their ancestors came here through Ellis Island, 400 years after we had been here building the country and the railroads and the buildings, they participated in the American dream that our ancestors had built. And on top of that, the Homestead Act gave them 182 million acres of American soil to begin their financial base on. So use it as a day to educate, which then affects policy and hopefully affects votes and hopefully affects those who represent us in the halls of Congress.
Well, also, and I think people need to also understand that Juneteenth celebrations in Texas were not just about picnics and parades and barbecues and concerts. No. It was voter registration. It was teaching people. It was doing all of those different things.
Yes. Yeah. So this year, we were really impressed on every speech I give that civic engagement is the top priority. I always tell folks when they said, how do I celebrate the holiday if they're not from our community? And I'll tell them, well, there should be some commemoration. There's definitely celebratory. If you ever touched a tuft of cotton in Texas, in the Texas heat, you remember it. And to have to do that for a lifetime, you have an idea of what our ancestors went through. I'm a descendant of Texas slaves, as many of us that are watching.
Yep.
And You know, you use that, but also civic engagement. And Brother Martin, I've got a quote from Dad that he used to say after elections, that half of us that are eligible to vote are registered, and half of our registered voters actually show up to the polls. So we're literally fighting with one arm behind our back. And in a world where politics is just policy and the allocation of resources, we're not playing with our whole team on the field.
Yep. Well, and also, and I see some of the people commenting in the chat, and literally, I wish some of y'all would shut the hell up, okay? When we talk about, again, for the people who are not paying attention, okay, it was the enslaved people of Africa descent in Texas when General Granger showed up in Galveston who said that they were free, okay?
Right.
Because the Emancipation Proclamation spoke to those who were enslaved in Confederate states, all right?
Yeah.
That's what they were celebrating. Now, do we know that people were still enslaved in other parts of the country that were not a part of the Confederacy? Yes. Do we know that slavery was outlawed when it was ratified by the states in December? Yes. But the point is, the black folks in Texas celebrated because they were freed because they were a Confederate state. Now, y'all need to stop all this little silliness like, well, you know, it really wasn't this, really wasn't that. So the point is they celebrated their freedom. And so because that happened, then it was, okay, and what y'all also don't seem to understand, all the people running around who keep commenting, all right, well, it should have been in December, whatever, but it's not. And so the whole point was you use Juneteenth to create a national momentum to force America to have to honor enslaved people. Some of y'all getting hung up on the goddamn dates. Seriously, understand the motive and the purpose, please.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And the bigger picture, you know, I always told people it was the United States versus the Confederate States of America. Which was a country. And so the legislation and the history that occurred when General Granger arrived in Texas with, you know, African-American soldiers to help enforce the Emancipation Proclamation, you know, the internet didn't exist. But historically, the Confederate States surrendered, and we got the Emancipation Proclamation, which was the prevailing document, enforced. So that was a celebration. And the theory is until we're all free, until all of us are free, we're not free. And so adopting that holiday and using it as a cudgel and a day to engage is the larger point of this discussion. But yes, we are aware of all of the history and you know, illegal slavery still existed in a lot of places beyond the end of slavery as we know it in this country.
And then someone says, well, most states have Emancipation Days. No, they don't. Most states don't have it. Actually, only about 20 states have Emancipation Days. Yep. I wish y'all stopped saying shit that can be easily fact-checked. Just saying. Just saying. Well, actually, so one of the things that we did, I totally forgot I had, people send me all kind of stuff. I totally forgot I had this. And so that's why I hung up. Someone sent me actually a Juneteenth flag and actually hung it up in the studio. Somebody sent me that a few years ago. And I was going through some stuff last night and I came across it. And I was like, yo, let's go ahead and hang that. So we appreciate it, Jason. Where can people get more information on Juneteenth USA?
Oh, thank you. So www.juneteenthusa.org.
All right, then.
Juneteenthusa.org.
And of course,
that's our website. Yep. And on Instagram at JuneteenthUSA. On Instagram at JuneteenthUSA.
All right, then. And of course, and it's no shock that your father, Texas State Representative Al Edwards, was an alpha man. That's no shock at all.
Definitely was an alpha man.
Absolutely.
Ice cold from Texas Southern and Pleasant Alpha Eta Lambda, as you know.
There you go. Jason, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.